So Bitcoin, in that regard, is special. What do I worry about? I don't really worry about anything. I mean, at this point, it's just a matter of who's winning and who's losing, and how fast is this entire story going to play out, right? If you want to help your family and your friends, then you go and you advocate Bitcoin to them.
Top stories this week. U.S. SEC deems spot Bitcoin ETF filings as inadequate. Cathie Wood's ARK reportedly first in line for a spot Bitcoin ETF. Bain Salu's support of its Euro banking partner. FTX has recovered $7 billion in assets so far, has almost $2 billion to go to cover misappropriations. 3 AC liquidators look to recoup $1.3 billion from founders. Hello and welcome to Money Talks. In today's video, Michael Saylor. Compare the benefits of owning Bitcoin's gold, the future of both assets, how can every company or country adopt Bitcoin like his company Microstrategy, and the results of doing that. So without further ado, let's get started with the video.
I don't pretend that Amazon, is the ethical solution to the problems of people in Indonesia or Nigeria. I don't even think Amazon pretends, right? Right. And Apple clearly is not the solution to people in China, and nor is Google. Google's banned in China. So Bitcoin is special because it's not a company, right? When we talk about an asset without an issuer, there's an economic implication. It's superior to a company that's a digital monopoly because there's no attack surface. The Chinese and the Europeans can target Google, Apple, and Facebook, because they're not Chinese and they're not European. But you can't target a non-company that's everywhere and nowhere. There is no headquarters. There is no management team. There's no CEO to subpoena, right? So when a government in Central Africa decides to deprive all of their citizens of property rights and say, you're not allowed to have Bitcoin, well, there's no Bitcoin CEO to arrest, right? Or subpoena, or put out an Interpol notice warrant on our red notice on. So Bitcoin is nation state resistant, and it is profoundly ethical because I can start a company in China that offers Bitcoin services to the Chinese, and I don't have to be Apple to do it. And I can start a company in Nigeria, and a different one in Argentina, and a different one in Russia, and a different one in Ukraine, and a different one in Siberia, and a different one in fill in the blank. And the politics are going to lurch back and forth. But ultimately, the conclusion is life is pretty hopeless for billions and billions of people around the world without Bitcoin. And with Bitcoin, a poor Uber driver or tour guide in Central Africa has the same property rights as a billionaire on the Upper East Side of New York City with an army of lawyers whose brother is the governor.
Bitcoin speculators send 35K BTC to exchanges in new elation inflow. Bitcoin short-term holders are feeling the need to sell BTC at $30,000, according to a recent report from analytics firm Glassnode flagging tens of thousands of coins being sent to exchanges. This indicates that speculative interest in Bitcoin remains fickle and highly sensitive to even smaller price movements. Historical data has shown that once SD profitability reaches an aggregate 20%, selling begins, and against the current $26,500 break-even point, anything much above $33,000 could spark a significant shift in holder composition. Current data shows SDC profitability at around 10% with a realized price, the price at which Stickcoins last moved, now above $27,000.
Well, what I worry about holding gold. That's, if you're asking me what do I fear, I don't fear anything if I actually have the superior asset. If I was a gold holder, I would fear that one person in Turkey would have the clarity, the conviction, and the courage to sell all the gold and buy Bitcoin. Because if that one person does that, then everybody else is going to start to copy them. The price of gold is going to crash from $1,900 an ounce down to $200 an ounce over time. Gold will approach its utility value. The monetary premium gets stripped off of it. Other nations will start to do the same thing. The nations that move first will have their currencies benefit because instead of having your currency backed by gold, your currency be backed by Bitcoin. Your nation is backed by Bitcoin. Your nation goes on the Bitcoin standard. What happened to the African nations that kept the glass bead standard when the Europeans showed up on the gold standard? Right? The Europeans basically printed a bunch of glass beads, used it to buy everything in the African nation, enslaved everybody in Africa, owned everything, and impoverished everyone that stayed on the glass bead standard. So, is the gold standard working in Turkey? No. If it was working, the lira wouldn't be crashing, right? Is the gold standard working in China? No, they're not on the gold standard. The CNY is weak. How do you know it's weak? Because they have capital controls. If they drop the capital controls, everybody would take their money out of the CNY and the CNY would crash. So, it's not really a question of worrying about Bitcoin. You ought to worry about everything else. If you have any money in anything other than Bitcoin, you should be worrying that someone's going to get rational and start to short or sell that asset you're holding as a store of value, and they're going to start to buy Bitcoin with it, because when that happens, gold goes from $11 trillion market cap to $2 trillion market cap. Bitcoin goes from $500 billion market cap to $5 trillion market cap.
WisdomTree is attempting to launch a spot Bitcoin exchange-traded fund, even though its peers have failed. The firm filed with the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission last week, making it its second Bitcoin ETF application after an initial rejection 2 years ago. However, WisdomTree's Jeremy Schwartz believes this time could be different. We've been able to successfully launch products in Europe. The European regulators have been more friendly, and they've been able to get comfortable with the mechanisms, the custodians, and how the markets work. The SEC rejected WisdomTree's previous applications in 2021 and 2022 on the notion they came in short to protect investors and the public interest. Schwartz hopes the changes made in the firm's updated filing will satisfy regulators. Some of the new filings have these data sharing agreements, surveillance sharing, new ways of doing it, he said. Now the question is, will that address the SEC's concern on market manipulation? But that is one of the things I think we're all trying to address. It's hard for me to comment too much about all the details while you're in these filing periods, Schwartz said when ETF Edge host Bob Pisani asked him why he thinks the SEC will approve the spot Bitcoin ETF this time. But I think the key is, will the exchanges share data, and will the SEC have more comfort than what was previously done before? I think the data sharing agreements are the key element for that. It appears interested in climbing. According to an SEC filing this week, Fidelity Investments is also trying to launch a spot Bitcoin ETF despite its prior failures. It joins WisdomTree, BlackRock, VanEck, and Invesco.
Right? By the way, I just laid this out for a nation. The same thing works for a company. Like my company's stock was, $120 a share. We had $250 million of assets. We bought Bitcoin with it. Today, the stock is quadrupled almost, and we have $4.25 billion of assets. Our assets are up by a factor of 20. We've made billions of dollars for our shareholders. Our stock is up 150%, which outperforms Apple, Amazon, Facebook, Google, every one of the big tech companies, every asset class. So what do you fear? If we bought gold would have been down 4%. If we had bought gold, we would have $220 million of gold right now instead of $4.2 billion worth of Bitcoin right now. That's what you fear.
So what's your price prediction for Bitcoin at the end of 2023? Tell us in the comments. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe. See you soon with the next video. Thank you so much for watching.